That's right, I'm back. I really enjoyed watching through and reviewing the One Piece films and specials, even if some of them sucked. And the One Piece itch hasn't gone away yet, so I decided to say screw it and review every single One Piece arc in 10 words or less. Same rules as last time, the arcs will appear in chronological order and be ranked on a scale from 0 to positive 10. That's right, there's no negative rankings this time. The arcs were either genuinely good or genuinely terrible. Now this time, when we get to an arc that caps off an entire saga, you will see the saga's ranking next to the arc's ranking, so you can see where that whole overarching story falls. Now the big caveat I should clarify is that I'm judging the quality of these arcs based off the manga, because sometimes the anime will drag the pacing of an arc to a halt, which could negatively impact my rankings. And not to sound like a pretentious slug, but the manga is the original format in which the author intended the reader to experience the story, so reading it allows me to rank it with better authenticity. This also means that I will not be reviewing any of the filler arcs. Sorry G8, you may be the best one, but you're still filler. Now, with all that out of the way, here's every single One Piece arc in 10 words or less. Introducing the human vibe check. Luffy throws hands with literally everything. And thus the Lord giveth the best One Piece character. Everyone should get themselves a blonde twink with issues. You made my friend sad, so now you have to die. Here's the only good Marine. Watch him do fuck all. Where's my crew? Why, they're in the whale, of course! Zoro bugs Bunny's a crime syndicate. Sanji wins by doing nothing. Wow, Hero Luck sucks in the manga. The worst covert operation I've ever seen. Wiper was the real villain. You people were over-exaggerating, this is fine. A media comprehension test for One Piece fans. Most fail. We need new villains! Send in the furries. Sanji character assassination. Oh, I'm sad now. Girl falls for the most ace person alive. Gay prison break, bitches! Terrible execution. And the arc was done poorly too. Oh, the redesigns. Ew. Just because something had potential doesn't mean it was good. Depressed Pixie Nightmare Boy tortures mad scientist Frieza. Alabasta, but worse somehow. We need a bigger audience. Send in the furries. Sanji wasn't horrible that arc. Can that continue? Maybe? Okay. Shouldn't take long for us to get back here. Right? The worst covert operation I've ever seen. Nothing happens for 50 chapters, then everything happens! At least Vegapunk gave a proper spoiler warning. And that's every arc in One Piece thus far. But just like last time, I need to make people upset with my ranking, so here's the top and bottom 5. Top 5, number 5, Jaya. Right off the heels of a massive saga, the heroes deserve a little downtime. Here, let's get them a new crewmate, establish their dynamics with each other, and then drop a fucking galleon on their head from out of the sky. The pacing is breakneck. We get introduced to one of the best concepts from the series, have a small bout with some monkey divers, experience the horrors, and then we're off to Jaya. It's great how everyone on this island is a massive asshole, except for the man we later find out is Blackbeard, the backstabbing bastard that Ace is hunting, who's just a cool dude throughout. The bar fight with Bellamy is a standout moment. Luffy refuses to stoop down to their level, thus beating them on an ideological level before beating them into the ground level. This arc is really good at getting you excited for the adventure to come and sets your imagination ablaze with what the author could come up with next. It also provides some much needed world building for the Grand Line. Yeah, there's some massive geysers under the ocean that explode in an upward stream and can deliver you into the sky, which will be the White Sea or Heaven, so take your pick. Cricket and the Monkey Alliance are wonderful additions. Their chemistry with Luffy and the others is amazing, and their resolve to find the Golden City makes them really endearing. My favorite portion of this arc though is when they're looking for the Southbirds in the forest. It just adds so much character to each Straw Hat. Number 4, Impel Down. The Straw Hats have been separated. Luffy is trapped on Amazon Lily. Ace is about to be executed. Wait, do I care about Ace? No? Well, I do care about an interesting premise, and a prison break-in, break-out sounds fun. And fun it is, my friends. As we dive further and further into the prison, we get to see each of the villains on each level. It's a fantastic way to show how far Luffy, and by extension, you the reader, have come on this journey. You don't stay on any of the levels for too long, and none of them are an obstacle to Luffy, which is very fun. It's reminiscent of early One Piece, where someone goes, "Here's our thing," and Luffy runs past them without a second thought. It's a great setting and an even greater narrative way to reintroduce previously defeated characters. And to then have those characters act as Luffy's party for the arc is so funny. Luffy and Buggy have a great dynamic, and Mr. 3 being forced to play the straight man is a blast. Even Mr. 1, who demonstrably does the least important stuff, is nice to have around because he gets to be Crocodile's uncaring mob minion. Speaking of Crocodile, the best villain in One Piece getting more screen time is always a welcome addition. Bon Clay is a standout MVP of this arc too, taking the theme of the saga to heart and helping Luffy to the literal death. It's quite interesting to see an arc where the main antagonist isn't embodying the negative aspect of the theme, that being don't f over someone to help yourself. Rather, it's the other inmates who embody that aspect at first and then later come around after seeing Bon Clay and Luffy's devotion to one another and their goal. And it's because of this camaraderie that they're able to escape. Though the one thing I dislike about this arc is this is where Oda introduces his Force Femme kink. This will show up multiple times in the series and it's weird each time. Also, why did they just turn into Nami? Wouldn't the big muscle guy turn into a big muscle girl? You've drawn that type before, Oda. You have Miss Monday. Also, Oda is the embodiment of confused but you got the spirit when it comes to LGBTQ themes, but I digress. Impel Down is great. Number 3, Water 7. This arc is gut punch after gut punch. Bam, the Mary can't be repaired. Bam, the money gets stolen. Bam, Usopp gets beat up trying to get it back. Bam, Robin leaves the crew. Bam, Luffy and Usopp fight and Usopp leaves the crew. Bam, the CP9 twist. Bam, Aqua Laguna is coming. Bam, the Mary is thrown out to sea to die. On and on and on to the point where you believe that the Straw Hats might actually lose in certain regards. This arc is the culmination of the past 200 or so chapters of the Mary's damage at the hands of Walpole, the Marines, Bellamy, the knock-up stream, that one dipshit at Skypiea, falling off of Skypiea, etc. And hearing that this poor little boat won't even make it to the next island is devastating, and the subsequent fight between Luffy and Usopp is just as devastating, if not more. The poor guy just got the absolute hell beaten out of him and is fighting tooth and nail against the strongest person he knows to try to save that damn boat. The preceding argument they have is great, but I feel like a lot of people don't fully understand what's happening here. So many people are quick to dismiss what Usopp is feeling in this situation. He sees so much of himself in that dinky little boat. She's small, she's not that strong, but she tries her best for her friends, and to see her be replaced hurts. If they can get rid of her so callously and easily, what's stopping them from getting rid of Usopp? Speaking of, so many people don't seem to understand that Luffy is also in the wrong here. Not for deciding to get a new boat, that he had to do that, his friends would die otherwise, but for how he chose to handle delivering the news to Usopp. Luffy could have been far more tactful in how he broke the news, and when Usopp starts to become upset, Luffy's quick to anger, so much so that Sanji has to kick him into the wall before things become too heated. Speaking of Sanji, he's at his best when he gets to do espionage and cool spy shit. This and Mr. Prince are probably his best moments in the manga. His stupid little note to Nami gets me every time. God, it sucks that he devolves into this. The CP9 twist is amazing, and while I don't like Lucci as a character because he's boring as sin, he is a great foil to Luffy for the theme of the arc, that being camaraderie. But probably the peak of the arc is this panel of the Mary. This might be the best panel in the entire series. Number 2, Arlong Park. There is a damn good reason that many people say this is the arc that got them into One Piece. This is what takes One Piece from a silly little gag manga into a full-blown gag odyssey. Nami has betrayed the crew and stolen the Mary, and the brave and daring Captain Usopp ventures to track her down and get some answers. With Johnny and his trusty and mortally wounded first mate Zoro at his side, nothing can stop them, until the threat of horrific death by Fishman is mentioned, in which case the brilliant captain sees best to divide and conquer, trusting that Zoro will probably be able to take care of himself. We get to see the terror of Arlong on full display. His cruelty is not to be trifled with, exemplified by the town literally being flipped on its head, providing an eerie set piece. Through a series of unfortunate events for Usopp, he is captured and saved at the hands of Nami, giving us this powerful image of her stabbing her own hand and showing us that she still cares about everyone but needs to stay with Arlong. Luffy walking away and refusing to hear Nami's backstory is a great moment for him. All he needs to know is that Nami is his friend, and the only thing he needs is her permission to help. And permission he gets with one of the most iconic moments in manga. The gang march on Arlong Park and wreck house, with Luffy getting himself thrown into the ocean with cement shoes. And thus brings us to what's so great about early One Piece fights that later ones don't live up to. Each fight has multiple win conditions or is a minigame. For Usopp, it's keeping Chu away from interfering with Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, or hurting the villagers. For Sanji, it's freeing Luffy while not drowning. For Zoro, it's finishing the fight before he succumbs to his injuries while at less than full power. It's a far more interesting formula than punch harder or cut harder that the fights eventually devolve into. Sanji's is especially fun fun because he essentially wins through his cooking knowledge, which lets him know how fish use their gills, allowing him to escape. And Zoro's victory comes from him knowing that Hachi's wounds are going to reopen because he's a psychopath and has spent the entire saga injured without letting himself heal in one way or another. Usopp comes to terms with the fact that he is a pirate now, and things aren't always going to go well for him, and manages to actually defeat a fishman on his own. But Luffy's fight is the most important, because Luffy is just stronger than Arlong, so it's not a question of will he win, it's how will he free Nami. Well, that's by obliterating Arlong Park, destroying everything Arlong has gathered over the last 8 years, thus figuratively and literally freeing her from his iron grip. The only problem I have with this arc is that the villagers knew about Nami's predicament, sort of undermining the tragedy of Nami being ostracized by her home, which actually gets changed in the live-action version, leading to a greater emotional high point. Now, if I have problems with this arc, then why is it a 10? Well, a 10 out of 10 is something that I believe needs to be experienced by everyone who engages with this specific medium, even if it isn't perfect. So I think that everyone who engages with manga needs to read the two 10 out of 10s. Speaking of, number 1, Alabasta. This is the peak of One Piece. I don't think this manga ever reaches the same highs as this saga ever again. The themes of trust throughout, the fights, the challenges and moments each character gets are fantastic. And I want to talk about the entire saga for a bit rather than just the titular arc, because it's my video and I do what I want. Whiskey Peak is phenomenal, subverting all expectations by giving us a bounty hunter town. And it's honestly a shame we never get to see bounty hunters pretty much ever again. This introduces us to the very first real threat the cast has had to face. They essentially have to go through what would have happened had Arlong gotten his way. An ocean full of crime, all led by one individual out to get specifically them. This is where Zoro has his best fight to date, Looney Tunesing his ass through a mob of those hunters. Robin gets one of the best introductions in the manga, and to this day I still don't know if she was messing with them when she gave him that eternal pose. I love how Usopp and Sanji are immediately ready to throw down when their friends are being threatened. Little Garden feels like one of the first islands that really shows what the Grand Line is all about. An island frozen in time that giants use as a battleground. Usopp gets to shine a lot here, which always makes for good reading. He's so jazzed about Elbaf and gets the chance to prove himself to the giants in his fight with Mr. 5. Utilizing the anime trope of shouting your attack name to bait someone into falling for a different one is amazing. This is also where Zoro gets to be the funniest member of the crew for like half an hour. His dumb little statue bit is hilarious. God, I miss when Zoro got to be this silly. Mr. 3 is quite the interesting villain, valuing intelligence over all else, though his plans are kinda stupid and just blames everyone else around him. And Sanji finding the eternal pose by accident is incredible, and showcases one of Crocodile's biggest weaknesses, the lack of trust and value he has in his men to the point where he doesn't even remember what they sound like. The crew is then forced to make a stop at Drum Island due to Nami being deadly sick because she walked around a jungle with her shirt off like an idiot. Now, this arc has some of the best moments in the saga. Luffy protecting the flag, Luffy climbing the mountains, Sanji saving Luffy and Nami, which actually has consequences with Sanji being out of commission for the arc. There's the absolutely beautiful and genius spectacle of the mountains forming the cherry blossoms at the end, capping off the arc. But on that note, I want to discuss the blossoms' creator. Hiriluk was done dirty in the manga. The anime did him a huge favor, and from what I remember, he's a lot better and played for more of a joke. Your introduction to him in the manga is him breaking into some random person's house, injecting one of the parents with some concoction, shooting the other, stealing their money, and then setting their house on fire. He then becomes friends with Chopper and tells him about how cherry blossoms cured his disease, which he's wrong about, by the way, and he knows that, and then proceeds to do one of the worst things you could do in his situation and shoot at Chopper in order to get him to leave. I don't give a shit that, oh, well, he didn't want Chopper to know that he was dying or whatever. It's bad. There's 100 other ways you could write this for Chopper to overhear Hiriluk's condition without traumatizing him. Oda is addicted to this trope of not letting characters talk about their feelings and instead doing something horrifically drastic to get them to leave. Kureha even does it in this same arc, and while I hate that one less, it's still bad. Oda thinks this is a good writing choice, and I'm sorry, he's wrong. Despite all that, Hiriluk's death still manages to get me teary-eyed. I probably would be bawling my eyes out if I liked him more. There's always the live action. And thus, we reach Alabasta, and we are introduced to One Piece's best villain. Crocodile is such a motherfucker, an absolute bastard, and I love it. He has the energy of one of those evil for evil's sake villains, but adds a believable personality, and he is just oozing with it, sending sandstorms after the same small oasis over and over again, framing the king for causing a drought and then using his police force to attack an entire town, causing civil unrest, gaining more trust from the people than the king. It's honestly terrifying because this is a plan that would 100% work in real life, especially in the age of deepfake technology and alt-right conspiracy bullcrap. You feel Vivi's frustration at being helpless while Crocodile's plan plays out exactly as he wanted, and then taunting the crew by throwing them a key that doesn't even work on the cage they're in. This then leads to arguably Sanji's best moment in the series with Mr. Prince. Again, Sanji is at his best when he gets to do cool spy stuff, and it's so satisfying to watch him screw with Crocodile for 20 minutes, ending with them using Mr. 3 to escape. Man, I hope whenever they need a key again, Mr. 3 will just appear out of butt-fuck nowhere. Mr. Prince and Luffy's round 1 fight with Crocodile are used to showcase his biggest weakness, mentally speaking, his shockingly short temper, and of course his biggest physical weakness, water. And can I say it was an absolutely genius move on Oda's part to have the way Luffy discovered this weakness be the water from the old man in Yuba? That's amazing! The crew then splits up and faces down each of the remaining officers. And I like most of these fights. Chopper, Usopp, and Nami probably have the best in the arc. The boys have to face a very interesting set of powers, and Nami has to, on the fly, figure out how to use this stupid weapon that Usopp made for her. Again, adding a minigame to the stakes. And while Zoro's fight isn't the most interesting, it does have a power-up that is something he's been training towards the whole arc, so it doesn't just come out of nowhere, even if it is essentially boiling down to, you can cut better now, and Sanji's weird fight is a puzzle too. But the highlight moment is definitely for Vivi, being literally lifted up by her friends to save her country. And it's great because Crocodile isn't losing because Luffy punched him harder, he lost because Luffy had enough trust and faith in his friends to solve the larger problem at hand. God, when One Piece is like this, it's phenomenal. The only thing that this arc gets wrong are Igaram and Pell surviving their respective deaths. It's emblematic of a larger problem that One Piece has, which is that there are no consequences to anything. Hell, in this same arc, Usopp gets hit with a 4-ton bat and he's fine. Wouldn't it have been more interesting and high stakes if during the hunt for the bomb, one of the party members literally couldn't move their body? And before you say, oh, well, the reason Pell survived was because of 9/11. No, it wasn't. Now, if you just heard that asinine statement and have no clue what I'm talking about, let me explain. There is a long-held belief in the One Piece community that the reason Pell survived the explosion in Chapter 208 was because it was released around the same time of the September 11th terrorist attacks on New York. This has never been confirmed. The only thing that Oda has ever said about that was that he condemned the attacks. The only thing I've been able to find about this was on the fan wiki, which refuses to spell the name of this arc correctly, so I don't think that's the best source. Oda is just a coward when it comes to killing characters, and if there's no consequences, why should I be invested in the story if there is a non-zero chance anyone who quote-unquote dies can just come back? Man, got a bit negative there. Now, to balance things out, I'm gonna start each of the bottom 5 with things I like about them. Here we go. Bottom 5, number 5. Skypiea. This is one of the most divisive arcs in all of One Piece from what I've seen. People either think this is the worst arc in the series, to the point where you could lose nothing if you skip it, while others think it's the pinnacle of One Piece and the greatest work of fiction ever. Neither is true, this arc is simply fine. The reason this 5 out of 10 is in the bottom 5 is because its bad aspects do a lot more to piss me off than something like Long Ring Longland. But let's start with things I adore about this arc. I genuinely think Skypiea is tied with Thriller Bark for being the funniest arc in the series. I'm never mad for too long because there's always something to make me laugh and put me right back in the mood for adventure. I love Enel. He is just a fantastic villain with a cool power, and the fact that he uses the superheat of electricity to melt and manipulate gold is so cool because it gives the stock standard lightning ability a unique spin. I love Conus and her dad and how they're ride or die for the Straw Hats, and Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp getting upset that she confessed to selling them out, thus putting herself in danger, is a great moment for each of them. There's also good foreshadowing and development for the Merry. I could go on and on, but this arc still has its problems, the most glaring being the Shandians, specifically Wiper. Genuinely, this man is a sociopath. I'm like 90% sure he's using his so-called motivations as justification for his horrible actions. We learn that he knows about Nolan and Colgera, you know, the story about unlikely friends from enemies and not letting culture stand in the way of reason, and wants to ring the bell to put Nolan's soul to rest, which is fine, but then why is he murdering every Blue Sea person on sight instead of trying to recruit them? Why is he ruining negotiations with Kami to let people back into his homeland? He has no authority, by the way. He doesn't get to make this call. He tells Luffy his land was stolen. Luffy apologizes for intruding and leaves. Then Wiper tries to kill him because he's crazy. His ancestor isn't out of the woods either. Instead of talking to Noland like an adult, he threatens the man who saved his tribe and daughter just so they can leave without properly reconciling and adding an extra layer of tragedy that isn't needed. Because Oda just had to have his dumb characters aren't allowed to talk to each other trope. The story was already tragic. We know how it ends. Just have them say they're gonna leave on good terms and then have Colgera say that he'll ring the bell every single day. Speaking of the bell, you cannot look me in the eye and tell me Enel, the man with an island-wide psychic radar, didn't know the bell existed until Robin mentioned it. That's dumb. This arc also fails thematically. The colonialism just isn't done well, in part due to Wiper being a moron, but also, how are Luffy and Enel ideologically opposed to each other? Is it fear? If so, then why isn't that trait showcased by Enel's men? They don't seem to fear him. In fact, they seem to openly dislike him. Why would the Skypians be afraid of Enel at all if Konis's dad can take a direct hit from his lightning and be fine? Also, Enel doesn't lose. He wanted to go to the moon. He got there. He just didn't get to stop for ice cream on the way. Also, fuck this scene, and fuck this scene. Moving on. Number 4, Marineford. Hoo boy, this one might get me killed, but here goes. This is the most overhyped arc in all of anime. Positives. Let's see, Buggy is a standout yet again, just stealing the show this saga. I love how Whitebeard knows exactly what to say to him to get him to push that army of inmates towards the Marines, and those inmates are just eating it up. I like Luffy and Whitebeard getting along immediately. Marco and Kizaru have a fun dynamic, plus Kizaru is just the best admiral. Not that he had any competition until the time skip. But when it comes to the negatives, this arc's worst qualities still affect the series to this day, which is why it's in the bottom 5. Where Skypiea fails thematically, Marineford feels like a death of 1,000 cuts, where it does so many little things so often to the point it's unbearable. Why the wall? What does the wall accomplish? Why doesn't Luffy stretch over the wall? Why can't Whitebeard destroy it? You expect me to believe a guy who did this literally 1 chapter ago can't destroy a wall? If the pacifistas are attacking friend and foe, then why did they stop for Boa? Why is Sengoku mad at the government for covering up the Impel Down thing to save Face when he literally ordered the feed to be cut so the government could save Face? Why are they even broadcasting this at all? How does Mr. 3 literally teleport onto the execution platform? So much of this feels like it could have been caught by an editor, so I have to imagine this is the point in One Piece where Oda's editors stop telling him no. And I know it feels like I'm nitpicking, but when it's all nits, that's all you got to pick. This is also the point in the story where One Piece just starts to become over-bloated with characters that take up precious page space for the sake of a reaction or to do something that a different character could have accomplished. Like, look at this. Why do I need to know what Diamond Jozu specifically thinks about this particular event? If Kuma isn't going to react here, then why waste a panel cutting to him? On top of that, anytime something happens, there's always the chance that someone will explain what just happened and some random jobber will simply say the name of that character, because we gotta know who's saying stuff. But no, let's not say the names of the rest of the Whitebeard commanders. You know, the people we're supposed to care about fighting to save this guy we're supposed to care about. The Whitebeard commanders, aside from Marco, do not matter, and you could cut all of them and lose nothing. A fight only works if you're emotionally invested in the characters, and none of the commanders have that. On that note, I wasn't kidding before. I really do not care about Ace. I don't hate the guy or anything, but he has almost 0 screen time in the manga, and I cannot get attached to him in that amount of time. From introduction to death, he only appears in about 500 panels. Not pages, panels, and he only appears in about 150 panels before the arc where we're supposed to care about him. This is less than 5% of the manga up until that point. The anime did him a huge favor and had him join the cast in Alabasta for a few episodes, which I think was a genius choice. It established a dynamic with the other characters and gave him more pathos, but as it stands in the manga, I cannot see why Luffy would want to save Ace at that point in the series. Some people say, well, it's Luffy's brother, of course he would, or that's just how Luffy is. But Luffy doesn't care about his family like that. Luffy's great because he will devote himself to the death for someone he just met. But we are always shown a reason, and we are given time with that character, so we are invested in them as much as Luffy is. And here, we don't have either of that. The best solution I can think of is to put the ASL flashback anywhere before Marineford, but I digress. This lack of emotional attachment culminates in a death that infuriates me. Ace is home f***ing free. All he has to do is run, yet he throws away all the pain and suffering his friends endured to save him because someone said some mean words. Ace's death was not a sacrifice. Bon Clay's death was a sacrifice, and an emotionally impactful one at that. Honestly, it's a little embarrassing having these back-to-back. I cried over a boat because I knew that boat. All I know about Ace is that he's an idiot. Maybe I do hate him. Number 3, Onigashima. When I caught up to One Piece during my first read, this was the arc that was happening weekly in the manga, and oh my god, this was a slog. You could cut like 50 chapters here, and again, lose nothing. Getting ahead of myself once again, starting with what I like. That big, white, rubbery elephant in the room ain't gonna talk about itself. I love Gear 5. Genuinely, I think this is one of the best transformations in manga, because it's the opposite of what most anime transformations are and what stupid anime fans wanted Gear 5 to be. It's so goofy and silly and creative and feels reminiscent of early wacky One Piece abilities. Sanji calling for Robin is a great moment for both of them, showcasing Sanji's growth, though the preceding fight is kind of boring. I think it's great that Kiku loses an arm, signifying the threat and actually having consequences. Speaking of, the Scabbards versus Kaido is one of the only fights I'm invested in because I'm invested in the samurai who stayed in Wano, which is most of them. Queen and Big Mom are amazing this arc. Queen is so funny and offers an interesting fight with Sanji, even if it's not the best, and Big Mom is the best emperor, so she's always a welcome inclusion. The I had no idea dinosaurs could do that joke is hilarious, and it gets me every single time. And that's kinda it. This arc was painful to read through at times because nothing happens for so long, and things characters do amount to nothing or could have been accomplished so much faster. What was the point of Kanjuro's betrayal if nothing comes from it? It's all immediately undone, and the raid proceeds as planned, with the only thing he accomplished being that Momo was taken to Kaido, and literally any of the gifters could have done that. Why did we have to spend so damn long on the Ice Oni virus? This could have been solved in 1 or 2 chapters with the exact same outcome. A lot of this arc really doesn't need to happen, and most of the fights are kind of boring and just waste time. Some of them could have been incredible though. I cannot tell you how excited I was when it looked like we were gonna get a Nami and Usopp tag team fight with Big Mom, only for Eustace Kid to slime his way out of the rubble and steal it. Hell, I would have taken Nami, Usopp, and Law, because at least then it's wacky power versus wacky power, instead of the most boring application of magnets I've ever seen, being carried by wacky powers. Honestly, there's not a whole lot to say about the raid. Any negative thing I could say about one specific fight could apply to most of them, though there's 2 big things that rub me the wrong way. First, while I absolutely love Gear 5, it is absolutely an ass pull and is not foreshadowed well at all. All mention of Nika and the importance of the Gum Gum fruit happen right before its reveal, and it does just come out of nowhere. And no, the one panel of Luffy pulling a similar pose and one singular mention of a sun god at Skypiea is not epic 1000 IQ foreshadowing. Second, why are Kinemon and Sukiyaki alive? Why even have the scene of Keen getting bisected if you're just gonna undo it with the most hand-wavy explanation possible? It completely undermines the tragedy and actively makes me angry. Why did Orochi not kill Sukiyaki? There is no reason for him to be alive, and that being the case makes me hate him. He spent 20 years doing pretty much nothing, while he could have been at the very least making weapons, training, breaking people out of Udon, or even leaving the country to find some kind of help or some kind of weapon that could beat Kaido. But no, he just sat there and did fuck all out of shame, which is stupid and bad. At least if he was dead, he would have had an excuse. It's another instance of Oda being too afraid to have consequences. And the worst part is, this isn't the first time Oda has done this. Number 2, Dressrosa. I understand why people like this arc. When we're following the gang at Greenbed and on the Sunny, I'm having a great time. Robin and Usopp's dynamic is incredibly underrated, and I wish we got to see more of it. Doflamingo is a fantastic little freak to watch in action. He's especially terrifying when he's targeting the weakest members of the crew. The subsequent fight with Sanji is fun because the objective isn't defeating Dofi, it's moving the ship or the clouds far enough away so he can't fly after them. I like the backstory with Law and Corazon, it's sweet, and Oda knows how to pull right at those heartstrings. Sabo and the other revolutionaries are awesome because we finally get to see the Revolutionary Army do something for once, and even though Sabo is ace, but again, he gets screen time and hangs around for the entire arc and even helps Luffy, which is what Ace desperately needed. All in all, I'd say I enjoy a solid 40% of this arc. The other 60 is most of the Colosseum and almost everything after the birdcage gets introduced. Real quick, Oda, what was the point of splitting the Straw Hats in half if you were just gonna replace them with a group nearly twice as big as the Straw Hats? And to give some of them one-on-one fights with the villains is just insane. So much of this arc could be cut to save time and space. Like this scene with Kelly. He tricks Luffy into going down the wrong way, nothing comes from it, and then he gets defeated off screen. This took up 2 whole chapters. Could you imagine reading this serially and having 2 whole weeks wasted on some shit that didn't matter and not even getting to see Kelly get his retribution in real time? It sucks. And later you start to jump from scene to scene without getting to properly take in what's happening or even get invested due to the sheer number of moving parts. Here's Zoro doing something cool. Want to see where this goes? Too bad, here's this thing. And even that won't last for long. A lot of the fights have the Marineford problem of being between 2 people you don't give a shit about. Was anyone really dying to watch a fight between Hirudin and Mach Vice, a carbon copy of Miss Valentine's Day but with less interesting powers and less interesting personality and less interesting design and less interesting? On the note of the Colosseum combatants, how do you take one of the most iconic manga tropes and turn it into a crawl? This free-for-all style just makes everything feel so slow, and at that point you could just do one-on-one fights and cut the in-between. Now I can only complain about wasting time for so long before I start to waste yours, so I'll move on to something I think is probably one of the worst aspects in the entire series. Rebecca. Genuinely, she might be the worst character in the series. Worse than Wiper, worse than Hody Jones, worse than Sengoku. Because at least with those characters, I knew what Oda was trying to do. There was the bones of an idea with them. I have no idea what he was trying to accomplish with Rebecca. Her arc is literally introduced by having her say that she doesn't want to be protected and wants to protect the people she cares about, but proceeds to cry for the nearest man to save her in almost every fight because women aren't allowed to do anything in One Piece. Again, Oda, what was the point of showing us that she is a capable fighter if you were just going to throw it away? You could have easily had her and Kiros beat Diamante together. But no, a big, strong man has to come and save the day. And after seeing this horrid display, King Riku decides that Rebecca should be the next in line for the throne, despite the fact that his daughter is right there. Viola is the one who spent a decade infiltrating Doflamingo's operation. Viola is the one with the experience being a royal. Viola is the one with the incredible power perfect for a monarch. It should be Viola who is the damn queen of Dressrosa. Speaking of, there is no reason for Riku to be alive. Dofi should have just killed him and all the guards, and if the only thing he was gonna do during the arc is sulk and go, "I'm ashamed," then he shouldn't exist. I can't believe Oda got away with this twice. I swear to God, if he pulls this crap on Elbaf, I'm gonna riot. And while we're talking about Dofi's plan, I don't buy it. The reason Crocodile's scheme was so effective and terrifying was because it was believable. He spent multiple years driving a wedge between the royal family and the citizens of Alabasta, slowly eroding their trust in the king with swaths of misinformation. Dofi's plan happens over the course of a day. If it had been given time like Crocodile's, I think it could work, but as it stands now, it doesn't. I called this arc Alabasta but worse. Where Alabasta felt like a story that was on its 8th draft or revision, Dressrosa feels like a story that's on its 2nd or 3rd at best. It desperately needed more time in the oven. Number 1, Fishman Island. There we go, that's better. Hey, thank you so much for listening to me ramble about this stupid pirate anime for so long. I really enjoyed making this video, and despite my very angry criticisms, I still do love One Piece, and I have a lot more to say about it. Still probably gonna be negative. Maybe. But if you want to see more of that for some reason, subscribe. Again, I don't have shame. You should know this by now. Press the button.